Number 1.
About 10 years ago, when I was 15, I house sat for the family a block over when they went on long vacations. Since I didn't have a car back then, I just slept at her place to take care of the dog and ducks and rabbits without too much back and forth overnight. She let me sleep in the master bedroom, and the dog slept in there with me. I'm dead asleep and wake up to howling. The dog is barking and howling at the window at 1 a.m. He barks a lot, but not like this. This is a stranger alert type bark that anyone who owns a dog should recognize. I jump out of bed and look at the window. The porch light is on, but I can barely see the front end of a white car parked just out of view of the house. It's just parallel parked there. No lights, and I didn't see anybody. So I was about to tell the dog to shut up and go back to sleep when I see the unmistakable shadow of a man approaching the house, and a few seconds later, pounding on the door. For reference, I'm a woman, and as a 15-year-old teenage girl, I was not about to answer the door to some unknown stranger at 1 in the morning, especially a house that wasn't mine. He's knocking over and over. The dog is barking louder, and I'm freaking out. So I grab my cell phone and call 911. First mistake, using my cell phone and not a landline, because the operator says, "What's your location?" And I realize I don't know this woman's address. I'm fumbling around like an idiot, terrified, with things like, "It's on Main Street. I don't know the number. I live at 123 Other Street, and it's a block away," etc. Because I've only ever known this house as that place a block away. Never needed to know an address. All the while, the pounding is getting worse and worse, like the door is about to get kicked in. He isn't yelling or talking, just knocking. I'm huddled against a wall, while a 911 operator tries to calm me down and says someone will be there soon. The knocking stops, and there's a flashlight shining into the bedroom window, but I'm hidden on the floor, and the light doesn't hit me. He resumes banging on the door instead. All the while, the dog is losing his mind. I would have set him out toward the front door, but he was just a little cocker spaniel, not like he could do much other than yelp. The knocking stops again. Silence. I tell the operator he stopped, but I don't know where he is. Was he trying to break in a window now? Or sneaking around the back? Did he leave? The operator says, "I'm transferring you to an officer in your area now, okay?" And clicks over. A man who sounds pissed as all hell is on the line. Without saying a name or badge number, he goes, "Hey, that was me at your door. Why didn't you answer?" I don't remember the conversation verbatim. It's been too long, but essentially, he's coming into this woman's house in the middle of the night to arrest her adult son, whose last known location was at this place. He was angry at me for not answering the door. The flashlight into the bedroom was, according to him, a signal to answer. The white car parked just off the side of the house was his patrol car. A cop. The whole time it was a cop. He didn't announce himself as police or say anything. Just banged on the door, expecting a response. I kept explaining I was just house sitting, that I don't know her son or where he is. I offered to give him the owner's phone number, but he just said no, huffy, and hung up. No name, no badge number, nothing. I never even saw his face, because he drove away. He'd come alone as well. The official story is he was knocking with a warrant, but even 15-year-old me knew that was bullshit. My only guess is that he was hoping to surprise this guy, unaware, and that they had some personal grudge history. The homeowner admitted to me that he had financial problems and owed money to people and had been bouncing checks. So my guess, that cop was doing an unofficial visit. But when I called 911, heard what was going on his radio, and backed off with some excuse. So yeah, fucked me up pretty good. And I didn't sleep in that house ever again. At the time, I was annoyed no police ever came to check up on me. But looking back, I realized how sketchy the whole situation was. And it's probably better I never saw this guy's face again. So unknown policeman, trying to break down my door. Let's not meet.
Number 2.
A little background first. This happened about 4 years ago. At the time, I was around 8 months pregnant, so very noticeable, and was doing some Christmas shopping at the local mall. It was around 9 at night. I finished up my shopping and headed out of the mall towards my truck. At this mall there is a road that goes around the mall, and parking is on the other side of this road. Therefore, you have to cross the road to get to the parking area. As I am leaving the store, I happened to notice a man standing in the middle of the road. He looked in my direction and made eye contact. I looked away and kept going. At the same time, there are 2 men that walk past him to go into the mall. He never looks at them or says anything to them, but kept his eyes on me. I noticed that he started to walk in my direction, but I just kept on strolling to my vehicle. Then I hear, "Excuse me, can you help me?" Being Southern has its downfalls, and one of those is having it ingrained into you to be polite. I simply just asked, "What do you need?" He looked around and said, "Could you help me start my car? I think my battery is dead." I may be Southern, but I'm not that polite, nor am I stupid. Please remember that I am very pregnant, and a woman walking alone in a parking lot. If he was really having car trouble, is it likely that he would ask a pregnant woman for help, rather than 2 men that had just walked past him? Doubtful. At this point, I know it's time to go, so I just say, "Sorry, I can't help," and keep on walking, a little faster this time. I still see him out of the corner of my eye, following me. I have my keys out, and am ready to go as soon as I make it to the truck. He's still coming. "You really aren't gonna help me? I just need to jump." Again I say, "Nope, sorry." I finally get to the truck, unlock it, and jump in. He's practically running towards me now. I lock the doors and try to get the key in the ignition, but I was shaking, and at that moment, the damn key just would not fit into the ignition. He gets to the truck and hits my window, saying, "I just need your help for a minute." Now I am starting to get angry and yell, "No! Get the hell away from me!" He grabs the door handle and tries to open my door and screams, "Just open the door!" Here's where I lost my cool and made a split-second decision. I have my concealed carry license because there have been other reasons that I needed protection that I will not go into here. However, I did have a .38 special in my console that I do know how to use. When he tried to open my door, my only thought was to protect my child and myself. I rolled the window down, grabbed the .38, and pointed it right in his face and said, "I'm not gonna tell you again. Get the fuck away from me." He stood there for a moment, in shock I am sure. In that moment, time stopped. I didn't know what he would do, but I knew that I was prepared to use this gun if he made any move towards me. He didn't. He didn't say a word. He turned and ran. I know I should have gotten the hell out of Dodge then, but I couldn't. All I could do was just sit there in shock. I was terrified of not only what he may have done to me, had I not felt that something was wrong, but also that I had just threatened to kill someone. Not a situation I ever want to be in again. However, should it happen, I still have that .38, and it is loaded and ready to go. So man at the mall, I hope we never meet again.
Number 3.
I was 12 the night my father tried to kill us all. It was the single worst and most influential night of my life. I'm 24 now, and I still live with the effects of this one night today. When someone who is supposed to protect you and care for you turns into the one you should be afraid of, it's pretty traumatic. You never fully get over that, and you never truly trust anyone ever again. I am the oldest of 3 kids. I have a younger sister, who was 8 at the time of the incident. and my brother is the youngest. He was 6. For years, we lived in a relatively rural area. We weren't too far from a bigger city, but we couldn't see our nearest neighbors from our house, and we had plenty of space to play. These were the happy times. My dad worked from home for one of the countless companies that started up during the big .com boom in the 90s and made a good bit of money. That all ended with the crash in the early 2000s. My father lost his job, and we were forced to sell our house and move to a less expensive place in the city while he looked for work. The house must have been glorious in its day. It was 3 stories and very spacious. It even had 2 staircases going upstairs, a main one in the front and a smaller one in the kitchen. Sadly, the house hadn't been kept up. It was not in great shape anymore. It also wasn't in the best neighborhood. It wasn't exactly a ghetto, but it was definitely run down. That's how we managed to get it for a price we could afford. I remember being excited at the time, because even as a little girl, I was always interested in ghosts and monsters, and it seemed like we were moving into a haunted house. I wish this story were a ghost story about the house, but sadly, as I say, the living are more terrifying. During this time, my dad changed from the loving father he had always been to someone completely different, someone we were all very much afraid of. He struggled to find any stable work and began drinking and would get very violent and abusive. Most of the time it was over money. He could drink away every last cent, but how dare my mother buy food or an occasional toy for us? His rage was usually directed at my mom, but if any of us kids dared draw his attention during one of his rampages, he was always more than willing to turn on us and share the love. As the oldest, I was very protective of my younger siblings, so I would usually round them up and quietly head across the street to a small park whenever my dad would start in. That way we were safer. If we didn't make him angry, he would leave us alone. Usually we would head back around dark, and he would be in bed, passed out by then. One night, however, he was in a particularly foul mood. The yelling was way worse than ever. I even heard him from the playground across the street a few times. When darkness rolled around, several hours later, we headed home. I could still hear him yelling at my mom from inside, and then I heard my mother scream in pain and fear, and the sound of breaking glass. I knew something was wrong. I knew something was worse than usual. I told my brother and sister to go to the neighbors and get help, but my sister was terrified, in a panic, and wouldn't leave my side. So my 6-year-old brother ran next door alone while we cautiously approached the house. When we got inside, my mom was laying in the middle of the living room floor, bleeding. The furniture in the room was overturned, and the glass coffee table was shattered all over the floor. When she saw us, a look of terror came into her eyes, and she gasped, "Run!" But it was too late. My dad had heard us coming in, and hidden behind the front door, which he slammed shut and stepped in front of. In his hand was a large kitchen knife, which was covered in my mother's blood. His eyes were filled with rage. We did the only thing we could, and ran into the kitchen for the back door. But he was fast enough to cut us off before we could get outside. He flipped over the kitchen table in front of the door and screamed, "Where do you think you're going?" We scrambled into the back staircase, and I slammed the door, separating it from the kitchen, and locked it. We were far from safe. There was nowhere for us to go but upstairs. My father beat on the door for several seconds, and then stormed off towards the main staircase. I quietly opened the door and pulled my sister toward the basement instead of going up. Downstairs, we had a playroom and a small living room. I slid the love seat out from the wall enough for my sister to get behind it and lay down, and then pushed it back as close to this wall as I could without crushing her. I did the same thing for myself with the couch. We lay there in terror for what felt like hours. I could hear my father almost shaking the house in his rage upstairs, looking for us. It sounded like he was flipping furniture and breaking down doors. Eventually, he figured out we weren't up there, and did the same thing on the level above us. Finally, I heard him coming down to the basement, and I cried silently in terror. Just as I could see his feet off the final stair, there was a crash upstairs, and lots of footsteps rushing into the house. My dad retreated into the dark corner of the basement until eventually the police worked their way downstairs and arrested him. Even after they took him away, I was still too scared to move. They eventually found us and took us upstairs where my mother was being treated by EMTs and loaded into an ambulance. She survived, although I believe he would have killed her if we hadn't come home at that moment. We have never seen my father since that night. He wrote from prison a few times, but my mom never let us read the letters. She did tell us he said he was sorry, but that's all she would say. We never went to visit him and moved across the country shortly after. He's still locked up as far as I know. As you can imagine, the entire family spent years in counseling after that night. My younger sister has attempted suicide twice, and I still have nightmares, trust issues to this day. I don't think any of us will ever completely get over it.